Hello and welcome to Tete a Tete. Our guest this week is Varsen Aghabekian. She is the Palestinian foreign minister and she joins us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Thank you very much for being our guest this week.
Thank you for hosting me.
The Israeli parliament passed a bill mandating the death penalty for terrorists who kill a person, I quote, with the intent to deny the existence of the State of Israel. This, in effect, means that death by hanging will become the default sentence in Israel military courts for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks. What is your reaction to this bill that has been pushed by ministers on the far right of the Israeli cabinet?
Well, this is another violation of international law and international humanitarian law. And it tells us very clearly what the intent of this genocidal mind is able to do. And we've seen it after the passing of the bill in its second and third reading, and what happens in the building itself. I mean, having champagne bottles, trying to celebrate instituting a death penalty that is being abolished all over the world by a country that claims it is a democratic country and a civilized country. But we know as Palestinians that this is an extension of the genocidal measures of the State of Israel and the criminal and brutal acts it has been able to commit over the decades. And today they are officializing, legalizing this sort of criminality. The bill has no legal base and it should be challenged not only by Palestinians, Arabs, but the world at large.
Since October 2023 in the West Bank, over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, 22,000 have been arrested. How would you describe the situation where you are in the West Bank? Obviously, there's a lot of talk about what happened and continues to happen in Gaza. There's also a lot of talk about what's happening in the region. But tell us what's happening in the West Bank.
The situation on the West Bank is extremely volatile. Today, Israel is exploiting what is happening regionally to divert attention from Gaza and the West Bank. On the West Bank, today, settler terrorism is everywhere, and settlers illegally residing in occupied, stolen Palestinian land are terrorizing Palestinian lives and creating havoc. And their terror comes in different forms and shapes. It includes physical attacks, it includes attacks on residential spaces, on agricultural and water facilities, inciting against Palestinians. This is a daily happening, and we are becoming aware of the fact that these settlers and the army are the same, and the settlers' attacks through militias and gangs on the West Bank are part and parcel of a state policy on ethnically cleansing the Palestinians and forcing them out of their land.
Well, the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, told diaspora Jewish leaders that he was talking to the government, military, law enforcement to crack down on what he calls the settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, which he described as a crime against innocence. This shows that not necessarily all Israeli authorities are in favor of what you are describing.
Well, then President Herzog said the truth, because this is not only violence, it's terror. Because if we were doing a fraction of what the Israeli violent settlers were doing, we will be called terrorists. So we hope that whatever President Herzog said becomes a policy by the government, because people in the government, ministers in the government are the ones emboldening and weaponing and paying money to the settlements and the settlers. We need to see measures on the ground. We need to see a crackdown on this kind of terror by the Israeli occupation forces, which very often just watch, if not help, the terrorist settlers.
I want to get to a recent event. An entire battalion of Israeli soldiers has been removed from operational duties in the West Bank after it detained and assaulted a crew from our colleagues from CNN, allegedly because some of the soldiers were issuing far-right words. Could this be maybe a turning point, or do you believe this only happened because it was a Western media outlet involved in the incident?
Well, to a large extent, yes, because it was a Western media outlet, because we've seen what happened with genociding our journalists on the Gaza Strip. But regardless, this is a step forward and we need to build on it. Journalism should be prevented from any attacks because they are the eye to the world and they should be able to report whatever they are seeing.
More broadly, I mean, you mentioned the war in Iran, in the region. We've seen this bill, we just discussed it, but also in recent weeks, the Israeli cabinet has decided new rules in the West Bank. It's a complicated set, but they will allow Israelis to purchase private land, give Israel more prerogatives, including in areas that are supposed to be managed together with your Palestinian authorities. What does this tell you about Israel's intentions?
These are all additional measures that will entrench the occupation, and they will go into the path of permanent control of the occupied state of Palestine. They are illegal, they are null and void. Any change that Israel does in occupied territory as per international law is illegal, and they need to be challenged and they need to be stopped.
According to a report by the Palestinian Colonization and Wall Resistance Commission, it's a quasi-official body, there are now over 780,000 Israelis in 542 illegal settlements. The number has increased 30% since October 2023. For you, this illustrates a de facto annexation of the West Bank, or do you still think this is reversible?
It has to be reversible, and the world should believe that it is reversible. This was Israel's policy since day one of occupation, the expansion of settlements and settlers, and the settlement enterprise, because expanding the settlements means severance of the West Bank, the occupied territory, and the unviability of a state in the future. What we need to continue saying is that international law sees settlers and settlements as illegal. There is a resolution by the UN Security Council pertaining to settlements and settlers. There is the ICJ ruling that affirmed the illegality of settlers and settlements, and as such, we should continue working on the dismantling of settlements and the end of this occupation.
But aren't you preaching in the desert, if I may? I mean, clearly the two-state solution is now dead and buried. What are you still hoping to achieve?
I'm still hoping to achieve the two-state solution because that's the only solution. Other than the state solution, it would be a one state for all of its citizens. And Israel would need to come to terms with the fact that it cannot subjugate people in a one state whereby they become a majority in the future.
Just a last word on the situation in Gaza. It seems the Israelis are still there. Hamas is still there and has not disarmed. Are you concerned about this kind of fragile status quo in Gaza?
Yes, we're very concerned, and we would want the peace agreement to move through the stages it set. Today, we are 5 months after the agreement was signed in Sharm el-Sheikh, and both Israel and Hamas are parties, signatories to this agreement, and they have agreed to the terms of the agreement. And we need to move to stage 2, whereby we see a withdrawal of the Israeli soldiers from Israel, humanitarian assistance entering to the extent it should be, and the people who have suffered for 28 months are able to breathe and see that their basic needs are met.
But isn't the Trump administration distracted and not paying enough attention, also maybe putting pressure on Hamas to finally disarm?
What we're saying is that, yes, the regional conflict is escalating and it is disastrous to all, but we should not lose sight of what is happening in occupied territory on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And today, especially on the Gaza Strip, where people are still suffering, and we see the scenes coming out from Gaza still horrifying. The injuries, the killings are still continuing, and the people continue to go into starvation because of lack of food and the high cost of food.
Varsen, Aghabekian, thank you very much for being our guest from Ramallah in the West Bank, and thank you all for watching this edition of Tête à Tête here on France 24.